here on Talk Radio 1190. I'm the host of the show, Matt Cather. Joining me in studio, it's great to have her back. We got Lori Vann of Vann and Associates. Before we get to Lori, real quick, a little bit of information for you. It's VANN Associates.com. That's the website you can find her at, VANnassociates.com. You could also give her a call, 972-315-5052. That's 972-315-5052. Lori, how are we doing today?
I am doing very well, thank you.
Well, it's great to see you.
It is very good to see you. It has been a spell.
Yes, and I know things have been crazy over the past couple months, so I know we were trying to get in here recently, but it's been a wild time for both of us. We've been a little busy, but Lori, since it's been a little bit of time, why don't we set the stage for folks? Reintroduce yourself. I know you've been on the show with us multiple times, but tell them a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Well, founder of Vann and Associates, coaching, counseling, consulting, and also the Institute for Non-Suicidal Self-Injury. We provide services in person, online, of all those different types. We also speak at conferences. We do business training events, workshops, and we are here to serve. So we specialize in things like perfectionism and also self-injury and suicide awareness, but we help people find their path to happiness.
And we always really do have some good topic conversations when we have you on, and it's kind of time-sensitive as well. It always relates to what's going on around us. And this one's, we'll do a little bit of everything, but one thing is March Madness. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I know this is going to pertain to me. But I know some people really like to indulge in sometimes, whether to soothe all their wounds over busted brackets. I think everybody's have some busted brackets right now. Or they really like to spending a lot of time in sports bars. Lori, give us some tips or I guess say tips that you would offer for consideration for these basketball fans. Kind of what's the best way for these guys to deal with this, guys and gals, I guess I should say.
Yeah. And I understand the upset over some busted brackets. Yeah. For my husband, that happened early on. There were just some unpleasant surprises.
Yeah.
And I can't speak because I don't even bother to do it. But the thing I would throw out there is first, consider that overindulging may give you that short-term fun with possible long-term consequences, and a lost game is not worth sacrificing your body over or getting in trouble with the law.
Yeah.
And that, alcohol intensifies whatever emotion you are feeling. So if you're angry or sad, alcohol intensifies that effect. So you become even angrier and you become even sadder because, after all, alcohol is a depressant, not a stimulant. And as a final note, if you're wanting a really great sex life that you can actually remember and not regret and be, shall we say, fully capable, then being under the influence is not the way to go. That's going to give you the exact opposite. So consider non-alcoholic beers, mocktails, because the thing is you don't need to get intoxicated to have fun. And if that's the only way you think you can have fun is being intoxicated, then it's time to speak with a professional.
Yeah, Lori, I think with March Madness, it's kind of double-edged sword because not only you're indulging in some alcohol, the gambling aspect of things is very prevalent right this time of year. And I think maybe that's kind of plays into it a little bit, do you think?
I think absolutely it can, because I used to work at the Texas Gambling Hotline back in the day. And yes, people will do their YOLO and they'll put everything out there on a bet, and then they lose it all and they're at a loss. And that even goes into becoming suicidal.
Yes.
And so, again, I understand a little bit of fun with gambling or whatever, but if you have lost significant amounts of money or you really can't handle the loss, it's time to speak with a professional.
Yeah, that's great advice, and I'm sure that hotline has been well used recently around these times. Let's and to go back to the alcohol side of things, you got March Madness, but let's not forget St. Patty's Day was just recently, and we all know what comes with that. You're just finishing up St. Patrick's Day. luck of the virus, of course, and some people are naturally lucky or unlucky, or is it something that's more in our control than we think?
I think luck is really a state of mind. I think it's a series of decisions. And so when people are quote unquote unlucky, it's encouraging to really step it back and look at all of the decisions that they have been making. And that includes, who do they surround themselves with? Because if you surround yourself with people that get into trouble, that aren't educated, that aren't making good decisions, well, guess what? You get lumped into that. And so I do believe that we have countless stories of people that have overcome so much adversity. It's amazing they're alive and they've become successful. It's not an overnight thing. I think that all of these ballers and all these people on infomercials, they're trying to portray this instant rich and successful lifestyle is really a huge disservice. Because
just not realistic.
It's not realistic in the least. And it really sets up these false expectations. And it's not luck. It is a lot of hard work. It is a lot of time. It's a lot of perseverance. It's a big old learning curve. And it is surrounding themselves with people that are better than them, that are more educated, that can help them with that learning curve and be positive kinds of encouragement. So I don't necessarily believe in lucky people versus unlucky.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think March tends to be a tough month for some people for just what we just explained and talked about. March Madness. I'll admit, I'm well involved with the March Madness, but I've actually been pretty good about not the drinking aspect of things. So I'm kind of proud of myself for this month, Lori.
Good job.
But St. Patty's Day was a different story. Now, the one thing I always find really interesting with you is you're always traveling. You're a busy lady, that's for sure. And I noticed that you recently came back from speaking in Alabama for an annual child safety conference. What were you speaking on, and is it relevant to our listening audience? I'm really excited to hear about that.
Yes, I was very blessed to be able to be a keynote speaker for a conference that had in attendance police officers, social workers, counselors, community members, and they were all so incredibly nice. I love speaking in Alabama. People are so friendly there. And my topic was the epidemic that's scarring our children, and it's non-suicidal self-injury. And the topic is very relevant for anyone that has contact with minors and young adults. There's a lot of myths out there about this behavior. And one myth is that, it's only a teenage thing. It starts in elementary school. And I have a lot of adults. I have a women's self-injury group. Self-injury happens in adults too. And the thing is, we had a mental health crisis prior to COVID and all the lockdowns. It was already a dumpster fire. The lockdowns and COVID and everything that's happened over the last few years was adding a massive amount of fuel to a raging fire. And I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. The effects of this are going to be long-reaching or far-reaching. And the thing is, we have the stats now. The stats are coming out, and the increase into emergency room visits, not just by minors, but adults too, for self-injury and for suicide attempts, huge skyrocket.
I mean, it's all-time highs right now, correct?
It is definitely high, and I've been doing this for 25 years as a professional counselor. I've never seen some of the stuff that's happened in the last few years. It's
devastating, and you hate to hear it. You really do, and for people out there listening, Lori, and I guess to build off that, what was your one big takeaway from that conference, and like what would be your best piece of advice that to parents, I think especially, but even younger folks out there?
Is that there is absolutely there's help out there. There are so many resources, and a lot of them are free. Yeah. I mean, if you want to say that there are some blessings to the internet, that's it. There's a lot of free, accurate info sites out there that can educate you about what mental health signs are. And even saying mental health isn't a misnomer. It's more behavioral health, and it is a lot on the medical side. And there are free resources. There's free counseling. I know for the self-injury piece, the Institute for NSSI, we have a lot of free resources. And so you can just go to the website of institutefornssi.com and find a lot of stuff out there. But the big thing is just, if you don't know where to start looking, just contact a counselor. Just contact Mental Health America. They will help steer you in the right direction.
And this is kind of like a side question from me. I've always, and I think it's really prevalent in men especially, but what do you think that people don't know where to go for resources, or do you think people tend to be more scared to reach out to people, or is it a combination of both?
I think it's a combo of both.
Yeah.
I think there's a stigma element that's still there with behavioral health, and frankly, Hollywood has not helped that in the least with how they portray those with mental health issues. And some of it is that there is that anxiety because you go, I don't know what to expect. And I've had a lot of individuals. The interesting thing is with COVID, it brought more people into counseling or even to coaching than probably in previous decades. Individuals that never would have thought about seeking help and realize this is beyond what I can do anymore. And there's been more of that push for education and destigmatizing it. And I see in younger generations, it's becoming much more acceptable. But those in the 30 and beyond still need a little help with that of normalizing it.
No, I couldn't agree. And I've had multiple, being 32, right in that range of, I've had multiple conversations with friends that have really started to realize that and use those resources, which puts a smile on my face, I guess you could say. Of course, we're talking with Lori Vann today on Ask the Experts. VannAssociates.com is where you can find her at. It's Vann Associates, 2 N's, associates.com, 972-315-5052. It's 972-315-5052. And with March comes Self-Injury Awareness Month, Lori, and is the behavior so common that it needs to be a month of awareness, and what can we do to bring more awareness to this behavior? I know we kind of touched on it a little bit, but let's go into a little bit more.
Yeah, it really does need to be a whole month in of itself of awareness, because truly self-injury awareness and prevention is suicide prevention. Yeah. The correlation there is so strong. At the bare minimum, we're looking at least 60%, meaning that over 60% people that engage in self-injury also have suicidal ideation or have had previous attempts. And when we only focus on the suicide piece, we're missing that prevention aspect of, could we have caught this much earlier in the game when they were starting to experiment with self-injury? And the question is, I did a 4-hour seminar yesterday for practitioners and emphasized some of these stats of how many lives have been lost to suicide that were 100% preventable had we caught it in the beginnings when they were engaging in self-injury. And it's a whole lot of lives that have been lost because we missed the early signs and we didn't intervene. And the thing is that self-injury starts in elementary school. And over the years of studying this, I've seen that downward trend. Yeah, it used to be more predominantly teens. It's absolutely like over 40% are starting at 12 and younger. And I'm seeing that go from 10 down to 9. And we now have cases coming up of 7 and 8-year-olds that are starting to engage in it. But you have to be able to recognize that there's over 30 different forms of self-injury. It's not just cutting. Yeah. There's over 30 forms that I've cataloged. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to miss it. And that's going to end up potentially costing someone their life. And there's so many different stats they can give. And I mean, if, and this is pre-COVID, 25% of teenage girls have a history of it. 1 in 4 teenage girls. We're looking at a bare minimum of 10% of teen boys. And for adults, for ones that I've worked with, at least 10% have started at 18 or older. I have people in their 40s and 50s that started to injure for the first time.
Wow.
And then there's over 40 different articles that cite the connection between self-injury and substance abuse. But yet there's not a single substance abuse treatment center I know of in Texas that specifically addresses self-injury. So what you have is individuals getting sober from a substance, but they haven't dealt with that root issue. And so they're going into self-injury as they're coping. And we see that in the jail systems too.
I'm curious, and maybe I'm out of line for asking, but with like the younger folks, do you think that plays into being a little bit of access of things today, that you have so much access to different, whether it's social media, technology, I feel like has kind of changed it a little bit?
I do believe self-injury is a major factor for the increase in it. It's two different aspects with that. One, it getting ideas of how to do that. And while social media companies have made some progress and working towards getting rid of that kind of content, it's obviously still out there, and there's all sorts of new code words that they use so that they can post those videos and gain access to the info. The other piece is just on the cyberbullying. That previous generations, it was you get to go home and that's it, and you could escape from your problems. But with social media, and this gets into parents setting boundaries, which sometimes is a novel concept, but that's a whole other conversation. Yeah. Social media has, and it's been proven repeatedly in research, has a negative impact on a teen's self-esteem, self-worth. And when we have kids that become suicidal, the social media is a big player.
Lori, we got started a little late. I want to go ahead and just keep on rolling through. And especially because I think this is a really important topic in regards to, we've been hearing a lot of fentanyl in the news, especially locally. There's been a lot of problems locally. Parties are taking place with the Final Four, spring break, of course. That was just, I think it's still going on maybe this week, but definitely last week as well. At the end of the year, school parties. Is it a good idea for parents to educate themselves and their teen young adults on what it is, and a kind of a part two to that? What would be the key takeaways regarding fentanyl, which is so prevalent?
It is much more prevalent, and it's 100%. Parents have got to become educated on this topic. We have teenagers and young adults dying from it, and it's not because that person necessarily knew they were taking fentanyl. Fentanyl is getting laced on street drugs. It's getting laced in a lot of different things. And we have cases where kids have died from the very first time they've taken it. And what we find out is they didn't know that Xanax or that whatever pill they got from their friend was laced with it, and boom, it happened. So adults have to become educated, and they have to have those uncomfortable conversations with their kids. And even the, oh, not my kid attitude, we've got to get rid of it, because maybe it's not your kid that will do it, but what about if they have a friend that does it? And this is where things that can be done. One, parents should be demanding their school districts have Narcan in every single school. Mm-hmm. It's free. There's absolutely no excuse for a school not to have it. I know that Grapevine Colleyville has done an excellent job, and to make sure that they have Narcan in every single school.
It makes sense.
It makes complete sense.
It's just like having an AED or something like that. Why not have a Narcan as well?
Yeah, and they have mapped out a great system for it, and even how much time it takes to get to each of those locations to make sure it's always within a quick reach. And every school can do that because the Narcan is free. It's accessible. Parents can get Narcan. And I really strongly encourage them, get your free Narcan. And again, it's not so much if you think, oh, my kid won't do it. If you have elderly parents, they are most likely on some kind of pain pill, some kind of medication, and you need it for your elderly parents in case they accidentally overdose on it. And we know that things like that happen because maybe they get confused and they forget what they've taken, and you need to have that stuff accessible. And it's not hard to use. And I know Grapevine Colleyville ISD is actually doing some free trainings on how to use it.
That's fantastic. That's really good to hear. Let's talk about some businesses you've been dealing with. I know you've been recently consulting and training with several businesses regarding some tragedies that some of their team members might have experienced. Why is it important that any size of business have a loss Why is it important that any size of business have a loss of team member plan in place?
No one wants to think about the unthinkable, but I've come across at least 3 or more different situations in the last several weeks of that's exactly what happened. And whether it's a big company or a small company, the team members feel it. They feel that loss. When it's an unexpected loss in particular of an accident or whatever it may be, then it leaves that void. And it's difficult for employees to move on and focus and concentrate. Plus, now they have to pick up whatever projects that individual was doing. And companies that go through and they have some kind of plan of having, I guess, a 1-800 counselor of sorts, whether that's through their EAP program or, and employing our company to do things like that so that they can come in, they can debrief the team, they can show them what supports are out there, support groups, can talk through the grief, can process it, or just do some grief education, anything like that. And it goes such a long way for team members to feel valued and to be able to move on through that situation.
We got to wrap things up, but real quick, I know you've been busy, like I said. What you got going on next? What's going on in Lori Vann's world?
Well, launching a new coaching section called Path to Happiness.
Awesome.
And that's going to have some different coaching programs for how not to be perfect and to let go of some of those beliefs. There's going to be one on dating that's actually accurate and not all the hype. And then there's one that's going to be for the caregivers of those that self-harm so that they know how to respond to it appropriately and not unintentionally make things worse.
And you can find that information at Vann & Associates?
Yes, that's going to be put up very soon.
Perfect. VannAndAssociates.com is the website, 972-315-5052. That's 972-315-5052. Lori, always great to have you. We'll do it again soon, hopefully.
Yes, absolutely.